Hi everyone, I'm Joe. Today it's time for me to do my third video about the Dublin 2019 WorldCon. This time I'm going to be talking about the panels and events that I went to during the WorldCon itself. Now, the WorldCon is an annual book convention. It has been running for a very long time now, since well before I was born, and it is the venue for the Hugo Awards, which is the longest running science fiction and fantasy award on Earth currently. Now, each year it changes the city and indeed the country that it is held in. Countries bid for it, and indeed I went to one last year, and I'm hopefully maybe going to one next year, but that's beside the point. It changes venue, and because of this it changes the themes of what it talks about, and the panels also change and are varied greatly. And some of the panels were really good, some of the panels were just merely okay, but that is like when you're reading books. It's to be expected sometimes. You know, you'll come across good books or good panels, and sometimes it will just be merely mediocre, and sometimes they might not be very good at all. However, thankfully, none of the panels that I went to were bad. There were a couple that were okay, but we'll get to that in a moment. And I will have to look down a lot in this video because I will be saying the panelists' names, so I will have to read these out. So, the first panel that I went to at the start of the week was Romancing the Undead. This had on it Chelsea Mueller, Annie Bellet, Maquel A. Jacob and P.R.K. Now, this wasn't our first choice for that morning. In fact, we had tried to go to a different panel, to a science fiction panel. However, that was in a room that was probably, they underestimated it a bit, and that was far more popular than the room allowed people to attend. So we went to Romancing the Undead, and I'm glad that I did, because whilst this is definitely not my kind of genre, indeed subject as a rule, it deals with vampires and the idea of vampires romantic, and how do they relate in the modern world. Now, with modern literature, I was actually quite happy I went, because this created a different viewpoint than what I'm used to. And indeed, I'm quite glad that I went to a panel to start off with that wasn't just the stereotypical me panel, which is obviously heavy science fiction. I went to something about vampires. That's not me. It created a nice twist at the start of the WorldCon, and the subject matter and the panelists were enthusiastic about their topic and gave lots of recommendations, which obviously I'm not overly interested in that particularly, but if you were, it was a good panel though, I think, overall, and I'm glad I went to it. The second panel that I went to was Horticulture in Extreme Environments. This was moderated by Helen Pennington, and the panellists were McDonald, Theresa, Storey and Paolo Bacugalupi. Now, this is to do with food growth, and indeed end up, however, talking about climate change and a massive discussion on that, which obviously was really interesting, especially when the people involved do know something about their subject. And the moderator of the panel, Helen Pennington, she is a plant geneticist. She has at least 1 or 2 PhDs in the subject. She's super intelligent, and the way she moderated the panel and interacted with the panelists really made this panel work really well. It was a really fun panel because she knows her subject extremely well. She's highly intelligent, as I said, and she talked about it enough to get the panelists to talk about certain areas, but not enough to swamp the discussion. She did the panel really well. Obviously, McDonald was one of the guests of honour at the WorldCon, and he's very happy with talking on panels. You can see that straight away. But the other two were also equally happy with talking about the subject as well. It was less about sort of science fiction type environments with space station horticulture, than more like on Earth in extreme harsh conditions, which I wasn't expecting, but I was perfectly happy to hear about because it made for a really good panel. The third panel that I went to was the Sapphic Renaissance. This was moderated by Robson, and it had Tamsyn, Muir and Freya Marske. on it as well. Lindsay Ellis was supposed to be on it, but apparently she's very unwell due to travel apparently, so that was unfortunate. Now, this panel is also one that I'm glad I went on to because it created a very interesting contrast and different subject for me personally, because it's not a subject I normally think about, and that is queer women in fiction, obviously science fiction and fantasy in particular, and female relationships in fiction. How are they portrayed? How have they evolved from what they were? Obviously, any kind of non sort of straight relationships have always been frowned upon in literature. They were far more than they are now, although they're still problematic to a lot of people now. You know, because people are not as open-minded as what they potentially could be. That's a different discussion entirely. And this discussion in the panel was really interesting though, because they know their subject, they know the difficulties that can arise from trying to write female relationships, and it was a really interesting panel, and there's a lot of things in it that I hadn't really considered before. So it really made me think, and I was happy to go to this panel because it was an interesting one. The next panel that I went to was Short Fiction of 2018, and this had some very well known and big names in it, very much so, and it was moderated by Alasdair Stuart, known for several different podcasts. I'll link some of these people in the description box below at the end of the video, of course. The panellists were Jonathan Strahan, Sheila Williams and Neil Clarke. These are all three editors of big and well-known science fiction magazines, and essentially the panel was just discussing how has short stories and submissions and the trends been over the last year. Where do they think they might go in the future? A little bit about the evolution of short stories in regards to short story magazines and such, and a few other interesting little questions that Alasdair thought up, and that he made the panel work really well. Alasdair did, and I was actually impressed by his moderating skills, because I know him a little bit online. Seeing him in person was good because he knows how to moderate a panel very well, so he did well on that. And overall, it was a really fun panel because obviously short stories. I mean, I did a live show series with Rachel Canardi a few years ago, which I really enjoyed. So this made me remember how fun that live show series was to do. And overall, it was a really fun panel for that reason, if nothing else, but there were many other reasons. The next panel that I went to was a really obvious one in many ways, because this was Booktube, the world of YouTube book discussions. Yes, a panel which directly about what I'm doing right now. Kind of ideal and obvious. I'm going to go to it. This was moderated by Stevie Finegan, who is an employee of Gollance, whom I've known for a few years now. The panellists were Claire Rousseau, Thomas Wagner, who I was happened to be sharing accommodation with for the week, so you know that made me smile. Linnea Sternfeld and Brianne Reeve. Yeah, basically there's a big bunch of booktubers talking to the fairly unknowing general public, essentially. A lot of the people that were attending the panel, you got this distinct impression that not many of them actually knew what Booktube was. So he's explaining the basic idea of Booktube, how it works, the problems with creating videos on Booktube, the benefits of it, drawbacks, how it evolved, and just what Booktube could become in the future. It was a really fun little panel, and I really did enjoy it. Obviously it had a very personal connection to me because, well, you know, I'm doing a Booktube video right now, so you know, this was a very personal panel and I really enjoyed it. I did get to meet a few people after the panel as well that watched my video, so hello to them, and I'm sorry to the people that I did miss, but you know, these things happen in WorldCon. Anyway, the next panel was a book reading by Martha Wells, and the book she was reading from was the new and upcoming Murderbot novel. Now, Murderbot is well known on Booktube because there are currently 4 novellas. They are extremely popular. I've read the first one, I loved it, and she's writing a novel directly based on the same character, of course, and her reading was extremely good because she was very fluid and very easy to understand with reading. There was no pause. She was able to read her book printed out on A4 pages, so she could pick them up, and she's reading really casually and really easily. I mean, she's a very good public speaker, frankly, Martha Wells was, and the book itself, I mean, it's Murderbot, it's really funny, and yeah, I'm very happy to read it in the future, although I need to read the novel first. Anyway, the next panel that I went to was Fairies and Irish Folklore in YA. This was moderated by Ruth Francis Long, and the panellists were Susan E. Connolly, Sarah Rees Brennan and Peter O'Gwillan. Now, this panel, I wanted to go to a panel that had a very distinctive Irish theme to it, obviously being an Irish WorldCon, and this was very much that panel. It was fun, fast paced, there's a lot of laughter. The panellists were obviously enjoying talking to each other and, you know, bouncing ideas off each other and just having a really nice time. As an audience member, this was really nice to see because they were just talking about the fae and the sort of Irish folklore elements within fantasy today and how they work in a modern setting and how people have updated them to the modern world. You know, because fae were once these sort of very twee idea, also very dark at times. How has this evolved and how does it work in modern literature? It's an interesting subject and one that I'm very happy I went to, especially being an Irish WorldCon and seeing an Irish panel. Some of the other booktubers that I was with had been to several Irish panels. I'd only had this personal one, so I was very happy to go to an Irish panel and Irish WorldCon. The next panel that I went to was another book reading, this time by Yoon Ha Lee, and he was reading from his very upcoming novel, which sounds a cross between sort of fantasy and sort of science fiction elements. He did say that it is slated initially for a 2021 release. I think it was. It could have been 2022. I may have mixed the numbers up now. And it sounded really interesting because all I'm going to say is it is not related to obviously his previous trilogy, which has Nine Fox Gambit as the first book in it. This is something very different, and it is to do with art, let's say, and a artist as the main character, and it sounds really interesting. And again, he read it in such a way that it made a really good book reading. It really did, and I was happy that I went to it because it makes me very eager to read that book when it comes out in the future. Although it is a long time from now, so it's 2 years basically. But I'm happy to wait. The penultimate panel that I went to was Down the Rabbit Hole: The Appeal of Portal Fantasy. Now, this was moderated by Catherine Sullivan, and the panellists were Shauna Maguire, obviously Portal Fantasy, Veena Prasad, and Genevieve Cogman, authors who have all wrote books and talked about at length portal fantasies. Portal fantasy is where the idea of there is often basically a gateway to another alternative dimension, let's say. I'm not very good at describing them. The panellists, however, were much better at me at talking about what a portal fantasy is, and indeed the difference between a portal fantasy and a secondary world fantasy. I am not going to try and explain the difference myself. That's what the panellists did, and they did it well. I would become very muddled because I was not entirely 100% sure myself what it was until this panel. I do know now. One is basically a gateway to an alternate realm. The one's to a kind of secondary world, but that's at the same time as ours, if that makes sense. This was a really fun panel. Obviously, Shauna Maguire was kind of like the highlight of the panel as such because she's well known at the moment, of course, for her series of novels. The one of them, which I can remember off the top of my head, is Down Amongst the Sticks and Bones, which has done very well on Booktube and in general. And between them, they managed to talk about the subject in a really fun and lively manner. And again, it was another panel that is not necessarily my thing automatically because this is portal fantasy. I don't read a lot of it, but precisely because it wasn't entirely my thing, I found it really enjoyable because this is new to me. It's different. It's not what I'm familiar with. So I was really happy that I went to this panel overall. And finally, the last panel that I went to was Fantasy Beyond Europe. And this was an interesting one because this was actually the largest panel in terms of the capacity that I went to in the week, and this was moderated by Nicole Gibbons-Kurtz, and the panellists were Zen Cho, Fonda Lee, Tasha Storey and Arthur Mayer. Now this was basically, as the title might suggest, talking about non-Western science fiction and fantasy, how it is written, how it fits into Western culture, or how it can be adapted to Western culture. Should authors who have not got a Western background try to write in that style, or should they write in their own style and just write it in a way to try and fit into a Western audience's sort of palette? It brought some interesting questions, and overall this is a really fun panel because it was interesting seeing multiple points of view, all vaguely with an overlap, but each distinctive enough to bring their own ideas and their own voice to it, and each panellist was extremely good in their own right, and they really stood out and brought this panel to alive. And frankly, this was like the ideal panel to be my last panel of the WorldCon, because it was fun, lively, it had a really big and quite lively audience, and it's just a very good panel overall, and I'm very happy that I went to this. Anyway, that's it for this video. Hopefully I've covered the panels and gave you a general idea of what the panels at WorldCon might be like. So if you are curious about what going to a WorldCon might be like and considering going to one, hopefully this will help you get an idea of what you might expect when you get there. There are plenty more things to do at WorldCon than what I've said. Obviously I'm saying it in my own particular way. Each person takes their own ideas and their own thoughts away from the WorldCon, because the WorldCon is what you make of it. Yes, the staff at the WorldCon make a WorldCon, but what you bring to it mixes and brings something and creates something very different. So if you want to go to a WorldCon, I would advise you try it sometime, preferably one that you can actually reach without bankrupting yourself, as the case may be. Anyway, all the social media links will be found in the description box below. Links to anybody that is relevant to this can be found in the description box below as well. And that is it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.